Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button if you guys are enjoying the content that we're throwing up. And make sure you guys hit the like button if you enjoy the video. And yeah, let's begin. What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and we are back with Knull. We're back with King in Black #1. Now, here's the thing. This is a one-shot. So the King in Black event is very much like Swords of X in the sense that we get a one-shot to open it up, and then we get all the tie-ins. And again, one of the things we talked about during the I guess, 10 of Swords, if that's what you want to call it, is very much reminiscent of the 1990s comics, right? Those of you guys who remember something like Age of Apocalypse, for example, I think we got Age of Apocalypse Alpha, and then just a whole bunch of renamed comics, right? So Marvel basically just retitled all their comics for 6 months, and then we got Age of Apocalypse Omega. That's basically what's happening here, albeit not Alpha and Omega. It's just a one-shot opening story. But this story is amazing, right? So if you guys are going to the comic book stores and you're buying King in Black, make sure that you guys buy the comic that actually has the King in Black cover on it, right? The King in Black banner. It's the only one that ties into the King in Black event. And of course, you can find reading orders all over the place and everything. But this initially picks up with Eddie Brock. Now, here's one of the funny things about this, right? This is where things get a little wonky here. And I'm not really sure how he got from here to there. But if you guys remember the ending of the Venom story, Eddie Brock and his son returned to Earth when there were no lights. Here, the sky's still bright and everything. Now, we'll find out why the sky went dark, but it's one of these things that kind of looks like a bit of a continuity error on behalf of Donny Cates and all them, but I don't mind because Donny Cates is amazing. He does not disappoint in this story. So what we end up getting is kind of like Eddie Brock, of course, still being possessed by the Venom symbiote. This starts to realize that the King in Black, that Knull the Symbiote God, is on his way there. Now, he's informed the Avengers, he's told all of them about what's going on, the arrival of Knull, you know, what it means, the power he possesses, and all that kind of good stuff. So the Avengers have basically been prepping for this, right? They've been planning for this whole thing. So the call goes out to all the Avengers, right? All hands on deck. And Eddie Brock goes to grab Dylan. Now, once Dylan wakes up, he begins to realize, okay, you know, he can feel that Knull's on his way. And so it's time for them to basically get out of there. Now, switching over to Captain America, She-Hulk, Carol Danvers, Iron Man, the current Avengers roster, Tony Stark has basically taken some remnants of Kree and Shi'ar warships and then basically weaponized them, right? Turn them into essentially detonatable bombs, right? Bombs that can be remote detonated from the planet Earth. Now, but when all these kind of bat forces of Knull start showing up, that all these different vessels start exploding, right? They literally start going off, and Tony Stark starts to celebrate. The problem with this is that you in turn have Eddie Brock, who basically hits to Iron Man and says, we killed about 100 of them, but like there's countless of these things showing up here, right? It looks like millions and millions of these things showing up here, seemingly one for everybody on Earth, you would presume. So 7 billion at the very most, if not any number less than that, which is still way more than 100. And he's like, you know, we only stopped 100 of them. Like, he can't be stopped. Now, one other thing that I want to point out here, and it seems to only really affect Eddie at the moment, is that all these bats being destroyed seems to take a toll on him, but it could also be because of the fact that Eddie's using his powers to monitor everything out there, right? So it could just be a kind of mental strain, but I did want to draw attention to that because all these bat forces start pouring down onto the city and basically like exploding, right? Like as they pour down, they basically explode into their symbiote forms and literally kind of fill the world with like an ocean of symbiotes, right? It's basically what it looks like. But you actually end up having Venom, Eddie Brock, taking his son Dylan to a bunker that was built for Peter Parker by Ezekiel. Now, a little bit of an explanation here, right? And we cover all this in my video series on Dan Slott's Spider-Man run, so you're welcome to check that out, you know, especially Spider-Verse, different things like that. But the idea is that somewhere along the line, you had a guy named Ezekiel, and then of course, Ezekiel became aware of the fact that the Inheritors were hunting down Spider-Man, right, all across the multiverse. And so this bunker was built for Peter Parker to protect him if he needed to stay hidden. And of course, Peter was actually confined there for some time, and I think Ezekiel actually used it as a base of operations for some time. Now, Ezekiel is a character that I believe was introduced during J. Michael Straczynski's run before he wrote Spider-Man One More Day, which is one of those things where everybody loved the run until they didn't. But, you know, that's kind of a nice little nod to like the yesteryear of Spider-Man stories, like just old school stuff kind of being brought back. But the meat and potatoes here is that this bunker should protect Dylan from Knull and anybody else out there that's trying to get to him. One, because it's difficult to know it's there, and two, because of the fact that it's just so well guarded, right? It's just so difficult to penetrate. And so with that being the case, Dylan actually wants to go, and he kind of has this genius moment. He's like, look, I have the same powers as Knull, right? So maybe I can seize control of Knull's army, like take it away from him. But in reality here, and this is something that's not really voiced by Eddie Brock, I doubt that would happen. And the reason why is because Dylan is still relatively new to his powers, right? So it's like a person who just discovered telepathy telepathy versus a person who's been practicing telepathy for like 50 years. It's just, they're far more prodigious in the use of their powers. And so for somebody like Dylan, yes, his powers are comparable to Knull's insofar as he can control symbiotes, but he's not as capable of using his powers in the same way Knull is. And so there's a much better chance that Dylan would be defeated and possibly consumed, taken over by Knull, than he would to actually win. And because of that, Eddie says, no, like, you need to stay here. I made you a promise that I would keep you safe, that I would do everything I could to keep you protected. That's what we're doing. From there, you end up having Eddie Brock, who's chimed in by Captain America, saying plan B, right? And plan B is exactly what we just described, right? The idea that all these symbiotes come pouring down. Well, while that's happening, the Avengers are largely waiting on Thor, right? They're hoping for Thor to get there. You've got Doctor Strange, you've got Namor, you've got Iron Fist, you have all this great big huge roster of people who have ever been Avengers who are here. But Thor is also one of these guys where having the ability to control the lightning and fire and lightning being one of the weaknesses of symbiotes would go a long way towards being able to stem this conflict. But currently, Thor's not here. What they get is something better in their stead, right? While everything is popping off, right? While everything is popping off, you have this like speech bubble. And you guys know speech bubbles usually mean telepathy. So this voice pops in and says, Iron Man, Captain America, please excuse the intrusion into your minds. This is Charles Xavier. If you require backup, please stand by. My X-Men have arrived. So you have Cable who shows up here, Cyclops, right? I think you have even Phantom X, which is kind of weird. You've got Nightcrawler, right? You've got Storm, Jean Grey, a full contingent of the X-Men arrive. And it's one of these things where Xavier is kind of like, I know you guys are waiting on Thor, but surely like a woman who can control the thunder and the lightning would be pretty much just as good. Now, the other part of this is that with Plan B basically commencing, that Eddie Brock actually ends up going to the throne that was used by Carnage. And Carnage used this during the Absolute Carnage event to control the army that he created. And the hope of Eddie Brock is that he can basically use the throne to extend his reach all the way out to the symbiotes here on Earth that have been brought here by Knull, and then basically take over control of those symbiotes, right? So using the throne to do what Dylan could do, but on a more grandiose scale, right? On a more fine-tuned scale. The problem with this is Eddie Brock is having a wildly difficult time punching through this kind of control that Knull has over his symbiotes. At the same time, Doctor Strange is facing off as best he can, only for us to realize just how powerful Knull is, in the sense that all these little symbiote monster things that he has, right? All these little dragons are just punching right through Doctor Strange's shields. There's no way for him to stop them, right? But just in this small moment, right, when they have a chance, when like Doctor Strange falls and Eddie Brock is like, okay, I'm pushing through, right? I'm pushing through to the other side and I should be able to take over this. Eddie comes to this massive realization that all hope is lost. And the reason why, when he punches through, he realized it's not just the dragons and it's not just Knull. Knull's first enemies were the Celestials. When Knull arrived here, he bonded to the Celestials and took them over. Knull the Symbiote God has conquered the celestial race in the Marvel universe, son. Man, dude, it's nuts. It's like all these Celestials come pouring down. And at that point, the Avengers, the X-Men, whole nine yards, start crapping their pants. What else could you do? At that point, like one of the holes open up and Knull comes walking out. And he's just like, so who are you guys? Right? Like, who are you supposed to be? Are you guys like the force that's here to assemble to take me out? Now, while all this was going on, they were waiting for like this big heavy hitter to show up, right? It's not Thor, but they were waiting for this big heavy hitter to show up, right? Finally, this heavy hitter finally arrives, right? Now, I was sitting there looking at this and I was like, man, I really hope this is who I think it is. And it turned out to be exactly who I thought it was, right? Like literally Iron Man chimes into Captain America and says, okay, the guy's here, right? Like he's gonna be here in 10 seconds. He's here and he's waiting your orders. Does he have permission to engage? And the response of Captain America is permission granted, only for us to find out it's the Sentry, man. It's Robert Reynolds, son, man, it's Robert Reynolds. The Sentry has finally returned. And I was like, okay, this guy comes flying through, whoosh, comes flying through, punches a hole through a symbiote's head, right? It's like, damn, son, dude, he like punches a hole through the symbiote's head. Dude, he goes flying for Knull. Knull's like, no way, right? So like, he comes, he's like, Robert Reynolds grabs Knull, flies him into the air, and he's like, hi, my name's Bob. You can call me the Sentry. This will be over in a second. Knull's like, no, son, man, let me tell you something. Dude, he grabs a hold of Robert Reynolds. He goes to rip him in half. He's like, come feel me. Dude, he rips him in half, right? Pulls the void right out of the Sentry, right? Pulls the void right out of the Sentry, right? And he's just like, child, I am Knull, right? I'm the Lord of the Abyss, God of the symbiotes. The darkness inside of you, that darkness bows to me. I am the void. Like literally just crushes the Sentry in one fell swoop. And it's like, well, there you go. Any chance you had is gone, right? Like that's basically it. Like you will all fall like the rest, right? I've met your armies, little ones. Meet mine. So he literally just like takes control of the symbiotes and pours them all over the various superheroes. And all the superheroes are completely conquered by the symbiotes. From there, he's just like, let's get rid of this. Let's get rid of the stars out there. So he in turn takes all those dragon forces, merges them together, and then wraps them around the world and blocks out all the light. And it's just like, damn, right? So like Storm is like the only one left standing, right? Like Storm's like the only one left standing. So Storm goes out like a hero, man, right? She's like, okay, look, here's the thing. If I'm gonna fall to this weird looking guy who looks like a failed 80s rock star, then like, I'm going to go out with a bang, right? Like I'm gonna go out with a bang, right? Just summons every ounce of lightning she possibly can, just starts shocking the piss out of these things, right? Just electrocuting these things all over the place. Knull basically summons his symbiotes again. They go wrapping up into the, into the spire over top of where right where Storm is, and just like snatch her up. Storm is basically gone. This one person who can control the light, and that was the only real weakness of these symbiote dragon things, is now done. And Xavier's pissed. So you end up having this thing where Eddie's like, okay, Iron Man, here's what we're gonna do, right? Knull showed up here, said, give me Brock, and I will kill you as painless as possible. Now, the reality is Knull intends to destroy the world, but Eddie Brock's stance here is, no. If I hand myself over, then like, maybe I could say, look, I will hand myself over to you, my symbiote over to you, you'll be complete, and then like, just leave Earth, right? Just leave us alone, just let us live. It's a hope against hope, right? It's a terrible idea, but it's a hope against hope, right? So what ends up happening is you get this really touching moment, right? Where like Eddie Brock and his Venom, his symbiote have this conversation, and the symbiote's like, look, Eddie, like you need to know, and doesn't really finish his sentence, but largely it looks like the symbiote was getting ready to say like, because of you, Eddie, I've become better, right? Like I was lost and I was kind of villainous and I was all over the place. I didn't really know what my greater purpose in the world was, what it meant to be in this space. But since I've been a part of you, you've made me better and I've made you better. We truly have become great heroes, right? We don't really get that much being said, but it's really cool because they're like, okay, let's go meet our maker, right? So they basically kind of broadcast their signal, right? Like the Venom symbiote taps into Knull's forces, which basically tells Knull exactly where he is, right? It's just firing up a flare in the sky, essentially. And so Knull locates Venom, goes and grabs him. He snatches up Eddie Brock and brings him to him. And Eddie's just like, okay, you can take me, that's fine, but leave the world, right? Just leave the world alone, take me and we'll call it in. He's like, wait a minute, I remember you. You're the one who beat my dragon. Like, I thought you died. Well, that's kind of weird, but no, I'm not here for you. I should have specified which Brock I wanted. I don't want you, I want your son. I want Dylan Brock. And when Eddie starts to realize what's going on, he's just like, no, that's not gonna happen, right? Like, your fight is with us, right? Like, leave my son out of it. And the response of Knull, he rips the symbiote off of Eddie and it's just like, I will take your symbiote away from you. I will make it mine again. And then I'll take your son. And drops Eddie Brock from the top of the sky all the way down to the ground. With that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this video to an end. This was amazing. This was a great way to start this story, son. Man, son. This is the thing, man. Donny Cates does not disappoint. If you guys are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Peace.